Recording in progress.
Okay, so I'm going to start on page 172. Tonight is obviously Chanukah. So even though we've been sticking with the Torah portions, we're going to take some time off for Chanukah. What we read in the shul yesterday and this coming week and the week after are also really, it's kind of a trilogy, I guess, of one specific narrative about Joseph being sold into slavery by his brothers, half brothers, and his struggles and his tribulations, and ultimately his rise to power in Egypt and reunification with the family. So we dealt with one section of that last week. We'll deal with the rest next Sunday. Today we're going to talk about Chanukah, and let me just split the screen here, and there's an overview. Okay, and what are you doing? Yeah, I hate to bother you. You just do it right. It says Chanukah, the 8th-day festival of light that begins on the 25th day of the Jewish month of Kislev. Today is the 24th. Tonight begins the 25th. Celebrates the triumph of light over darkness, of purity over adulteration, and of spirituality over materialism. More than 21 centuries ago, the Holy Land was ruled by the Seleucids, which is the Syrian Greeks, after Alexander the Great died. Yeah, thank you. His empire was split into several parts. One of them was the Seleucid. There was the Syrians to the north of Israel, who sought to forcefully Hellenize the people of Israel. Against all odds, a small band of faithful Jews defeated one of the mightiest armies on earth, drove the Greeks from the land, reclaimed the Holy Temple in Jerusalem, and rededicated it to the service of God. When they sought to light the temple's menorah, and this is a menorah exists well before Hanukkah, it's biblical. It was one of the important ritual articles in the temple. And so is menorah. We have a 9-branch menorah. This was a 7-branch menorah, candelabrum. They found only a single cruse of olive oil that escaped the contamination by the Greeks. Miraculously, the 1-day supply burned for 8 days until new oil could be prepared under conditions of ritual purity. To commemorate and publicize these miracles, the sages instituted the festival of Hanukkah. At the heart of the festival is the nightly menorah, candelabrum lighting, a single flame on the first night, and then progressively increased, 2 on the second evening, and so on until the 8th night of Hanukkah, when all 8 lights are kindled. On Hanukkah, we also add Hallel, which is a prayer in our morning prayers, which is reserved for holidays. And this is a holiday. It's a rabbinic holiday, but it's a holiday in that way where we alter the liturgy. And in our Amidah, we recite 3 times a day, there's a section there called Va'al Nisim, which recognizes the Chanukah holiday. In our daily prayers, to offer praise and thanksgiving to God for delivering the strong into the hands of the weak, the many into the hands of the few, the wicked into the hands of the righteous. Chanukah customs include eating foods fried in oil, latkes, potato pancakes, and sufganiyot, which is donuts, playing with the dreidel, a spinning top on which are inscribed the Hebrew letters Nun, Gimel, Hey, Shin, which is an acronym for Nes Gadol Hayasham. A great miracle happened there. And in Israel, they do a great miracle happened here. And the giving of Chanukah geld, which is gifts of money to children or to adults. Okay.
I was reading yesterday
Yes.
about the dreidels that are being delivered to Ukraine from Israel.
Okay.
The letters there stand for a great miracle happened here.
Right. Exactly, because it's Israeli, right? We have here a dreidel collection that was donated to us, but and there are a couple there also from Israel, right? Okay, and in Ukraine too, right? Okay, so before we get into the text that we have here in the Torah studies, this is going to be a focus on the centrality of peace in Judaism, which doesn't seem to have, I mean, it's a great thing. It would not necessarily look like something that is specifically connected to Hanukkah. Hanukkah was a war. But we want to talk about the idea of peace. We want to talk about this relationship with Hanukkah. And a way in, and they do a great job here, but I think a way in I think they tried to streamline the thought a little bit. Maybe it could make it a little more complicated for you. This whole idea, as it's going to be unpacked, was pursued by the Rebbe when he was looking to I don't see anybody on.
Oh, do you want to see him?
No, I just want to make sure I see it. Okay, that's fine. That's good. I just want to make sure I'm not off. Oh, I can see there. Okay. There is a curious. The Rebbe analyzed a curious piece of Maimonides. Maimonides has a code of law. Maimonides goes through all the sections of Jewish life and law. God and conduct and then prayers and blessings and all different types of civil law and so on. He goes through all the laws of Shabbat. It's close to 30, or it's more than 30 chapters. And then he goes through all the biblical holidays because he's very organized. And then he gets to Chanukah and Purim. In the Chanukah, at the end of the Chanukah, his Chanukah laws, he writes that if a person only has enough money, it's Friday night of Chanukah. They only have one candle. And the question will be, and we're going to get into this in a second, which candle should I light? Should I make it a Shabbos candle or should I make it a Chanukah candle? In addition, he writes, and they don't have this here, he says, what happens if I only have enough money for a candle or a glass of wine? Friday nights, we have as part of our Shabbos ritual something called Kiddush. We welcome the Shabbos, we make a blessing over a glass of wine. Should I spend it on a glass of wine, which is obviously it's an important mitzvah, or the Shabbos candle? Maimonides says in both of those cases, whether it's the Chanukah candle or the Shabbos candle, or the Kiddush wine or the Shabbos candle comes first. Why? And we're going to read this here soon. And it's in text 1, but I want to just talk about a little bit before that. The idea of Shabbos candles are about peace in the home, and peace comes first. It is a piece of primary importance. So therefore, Kiddush is important, but Shabbos candle comes first. Chanukah candles are important, but Shabbos comes first. So there are a couple of questions about Maimonides here, like about what he's thinking. First of all, why isn't he doesn't mention this in the laws on Shabbos? He's got the things, and he goes in sequence. So if it's a law about Shabbos candles, it really doesn't belong, especially with the Shabbos and Kiddush, but doesn't belong in Chanukah at all. And then he comes up with this idea, which really is, usually he's quoting the Talmud on everything, even though he doesn't write where it's from. He says the entire Torah was given to introduce peace to the world. That's a broad statement. That's a sweeping statement. It's a Maimonides statement. So it's a Torah statement, but it's not found anywhere. It's his statement that he pulled from his understanding of Torah. Now, what does this all have to do with Chanukah? And especially if we're talking about primacy of Shabbos candles, should have been talking about it in the laws of Shabbos. So the Rebbe analyzed this, and I want to take a look about what this idea of peace and Shabbos peace and Chanukah peace would be. Text 1 from Maimonides, it says, if you have a choice between lighting up your home in honor of Shabbos and lighting Shabbos candles, light up the home because this enhances peace. Now, one more thing which I actually meant to say before is that when it comes to in Jewish law, the idea of Shabbos candles, that it makes a room bright and things visible, is a good thing. That's one of the things we want out of a Shabbos candle. Yeah, today's electricity, we don't need it as much. But at times of the Talmud, it added to the beauty of Shabbos, to the joy of Shabbos, and to peace in the home, if we could see where we're going. And we're not going to trip. And in one of the languages, it said that it's depressing to sit in the dark. So we want to light up the home. The idea of us benefiting from the light is very much there. When it comes to the Chanukah lights, it is specifically not there. Hanukkah lights are about publicizing a miracle. And as a matter of fact, we have in menorahs specifically, there's going to be 8 at one level and 1 that's separate from them. It's either higher than them or it's separate to the side. It's called a shamash. Shamash means a servant candle. One of the ideas is that what happens if the room is dark, and we're really not supposed to be benefiting from the Chanukah candles. In the prayer we say after the lighting of the candles, one of the things we say is we really should not be benefiting from these candles because it's all about God and publicizing a miracle. So we put that separate candle. We say, from you we can have light. So if I walk into a dark room and Hanukkah candles are giving light and I can see, I attribute that just to the shamash, because we're not supposed to have benefit from the Hanukkah candles. So it's very different than Shabbos candles. Shabbos candles are about bringing light to our lives in the room. We want to have benefit from Shabbos candles. Hanukkah candles are about lighting up the darkness, maybe, and celebrating a miracle, but it's not for our personal benefit. So Hanukkah candles are not about bringing peace to the home. Shabbos candles are specifically about bringing peace to the home. So Maimonides is saying, therefore, light up the home, which means for your benefit to bring quality to your life. And that means the Shabbos candles, not the Hanukkah candles, because this enhances peace. Peace is the highest priority, as evidenced by the fact that God's own name is erased to create peace between a husband and a wife. So I want, this is a bit of a sidebar, but it's an important sidebar, and we're going to come up again later, and Maimonides inserts it here centrally. There is a Torah mitzvah, which I don't want to get sidetracked with, but it's a case of suspected adultery, where there is discord in a home, and a husband is suspicious and more than suspicious, feels quite certain about the fact that there's been infidelity, and now this is breaking up the family. So if the woman says it's not true, there is a service that the Torah scripturally describes. And it's a very solemn service in the temple. And there is a piece of parchment, of Torah writing, that is written like it's written on the Torah, with God's name, about this whole section, called the Sota. And when we write God's name in the Torah, you can't erase that. And we're very careful about that. Even if you have to fix something, very weird. Erasing God's name is seen as very disrespectful. Here we scrape it off. We erase everything, including God's name, into water, and the woman drinks it. And it says if she was innocent, then her health will improve. You'll be able to see bodily signs that everything was good. It's a magic potion. But what's odd about that is that we do something by really erasing God's name, scraping off God's name. And one of the things that the Talmud tells us is that the Torah is showing us that God is saying the marital unity and harmony between husband and wife is so important to me. Erase my name if that's what's going to help restore love and peace and stability and trust in a home. So Maimonides brings that. He says, if you want to look at the Torah and find peace is the highest priority, says God's own name is erased to create peace between a husband and a wife. Peace is of primary importance. And here Maimonides gives this quote: "For the entire Torah was given to introduce peace to the world, as the verse states, its ways are pleasant and all its paths are peaceful." Okay. Now, so Shabbos, we had said before, the Shabbos candles are there to help bring, it's a tranquil atmosphere to the home. We'll call it peace. More spiritually, say it's a time for that helps us review our relationships and how we're treating people and how and strengthen our relationships. That's more of a cognitive psycho-spiritual idea. But in the Talmud's language, we light candles on Shabbos because the family would be distressed to sit in the dark. That's Rashi on the Talmud, the primary commentary on the Talmud, and I've mentioned this. I think it was last week, two weeks ago. We had something that says you don't want to trip. Just makes life easier. It's a more pleasant Shabbos, and in a general way, sometimes it's called this. It's the pleasure of Shabbos or the honor of Shabbos, but it's often also spoken about the idea of what's called Shalom Bayis, peace in the home. So Shabbos candles are, in effect, either functional, be able to see what's going on, or cognitive and spiritual and emotional, to be able to bring peace in the home. Text 2b from the founder of Chabad in his Code of Jewish Law is a rabbinic enactment to light candles in every room that we enter on Shabbos to ensure peace in the home so that the people will not stumble on wood or stone. The primary mitzvah is to light candles near the dinner table. So what he says is something which we don't practice. But I guess maybe they used to do it before there was electricity in people's homes. He says there should be Shabbos candles in every room because it should be a bright home. The main ones are on the dinner table. Put them everywhere. I've never seen that anywhere or heard that it's practiced anywhere in today's day. We usually do it by the Shabbos table. But the idea is it's about the home. You're living in different rooms. Yeah.
So on Shabbos, they would light candles just so they could see. What are they doing the other 6 nights where there's no electricity? Are they
Right.
sitting in the dark those other 6 nights?
My guess is, from my understanding of it, that it was couldn't afford the candles so often, so they would use it sparingly. And Shabbos was a time, don't be sparing. Just there should be something special that it's a more upbeat home. And text 3 about the Code of Jewish Law, Code of Jewish Law on Chanukah, it says, one must fill the candle with enough oil to burn for 30 minutes after nightfall. During these 30 minutes, the Chanukah candles are obligatory, but it's forbidden to benefit from the light. This is what I'm saying. This is built into Jewish law that we don't benefit from the light. So the Shabbos candles are very much about ambiance of the home. We're going to call it a general term, shalom bayis, peace in the home. And Hanukkah candles are not. Hanukkah candles are about a wonderful thing, proclaiming a miracle. So here in the laws of Hanukkah, Maimonides points out that since if you have to choose between the two, we go with Shabbos candles, not because Shabbos is biblical and Hanukkah is rabbinic, but because that would be a great case also. You want to honor Shabbos, that comes before honoring Hanukkah. So no, we honor it. We do it because one represents peace in the home, and we give that precedence to this publicizing of the miracle. But again, that's stuck into the Hanukkah laws. So, which is curious, because Hanukkah, you want to talk about Hanukkah, not about what Hanukkah isn't. I want to talk about what Hanukkah is, not what it isn't. So text 4. Let's take a look at just a general look at mitzvahs. Mitzvahs, we say, are interconnected. And actually, before we get into the text 4, in Jewish law, we bump up against competing values or competing mitzvahs. So, for example, you're not supposed to make a wound on Shabbos. It's a bris you make on Shabbos. Why? Because of the way the Torah describes it. So one, I was going to say, it eclipses the other or rises above the other. The prohibition not to make a wound on Shabbos, even if it's a wound a necessary wound, we make a bris on Shabbos. There's another idea that sometimes it's when you're in the middle of a mitzvah, you don't have to stop to do another mitzvah. It depends if anyone else can do it or whatever. This is more complicated, so I don't want to oversimplify it. But the example given in the Talmud is I'm traveling now by wagon to Ohio to free a captive. It's a mitzvah. I have an ability to free a captive. And now I'm traveling, and Sukkot comes. Sukkot, what am I going to do? I got to stop. I got to build a sukkah. That's the Talmud say. The Talmud says, don't worry about the sukkah. You're in the middle of a mitzvah. And the language of the Talmud is, if you're involved in the mitzvah, you're absolved from another mitzvah which interferes. Again, I'm not necessarily saying try this at home. It depends on how it works. Now, what's the thought process? The thought process is, what's a mitzvah? Each mitzvah has its own thing. Freeing a captive, someone who is unjustly held. Remember, you're talking about hundreds of years ago in some dungeon somewhere. That's a very obvious human value. Sukkah also has a value, a beautiful value, connection with God and recognition of God's protection of us. Every mitzvah has its own message. But at the end of the day, what makes the mitzvahs is that God told us to do it. We're doing what God wants us to. So if God wants us to do something, that's what's really important about a sukkah. Well, God also wants me to I was in the middle of freeing a captive, which is also a mitzvah. So at the core, they're all equally weighted at some level, equally weighted directives on the plan given to us by a loved one, God. And it's not really one contradicting the other. It's all coming from God. So look at text 4. All mitzvahs are interconnected in complete oneness. Our sages taught that one must never weigh one of the Torah's mitzvahs against the other. Even though you could say, "Oh my gosh, that seems so incredibly important." And speaking gossip, everyone does that. The lightest mitzvah and the harshest mitzvah were given by the same shepherd, namely the one God who spoke them. Therefore, each mitzvah is inter-included with all mitzvahs. Right? Obviously, the horror of someone, God forbid, murdering, or God forbid, just making a lighthearted insult. To us, we're going to take them differently, but the Talmud says, don't mess with it. They're all coming from God. This is why one who is engaged in the mitzvah is exempt from other mitzvahs. The meaning here is that it's considered as if we fulfilled both mitzvahs, the mitzvah that we performed and the mitzvah from which we were exempt. This is because this mitzvah that we performed includes the one from which we were exempt. So this is taking it an extra step, is that it's not like I didn't keep sukkahs this year, because I was on my way to Ohio. I did what God wants, so I get credit for the sukkah also. I just couldn't. I can't. The two couldn't. Were irreconcilable. And it's because it's not so much about the divine scoreboard that you got the sukkah. I'm doing what God wants. That's what it is. And if I'm doing what God wants, then again, within reason, because maybe I could have had someone else. Maybe I have a cousin in Ohio who could have done it, and then I could have my sukkah, because it has to be approached with a sense of reverence for each specific mitzvah. But there are times when they are irreconcilable. Fulfilling one mitzvah, it not only absolves us, but it's really as though we didn't. It's not as though we neglected the other mitzvah. Now that's as far as in general when there's a clash of mitzvahs. In text 5, we find the Rebbe, he's turning to Maimonides' idea. Maimonides, as I said, he has this quote, which is it's his quote. It's not a Talmudic one. That everything in the Torah was every mitzvah was given to us to bring peace to the world. Putting on tefillin, eating matzah, every single mitzvah was given to us in order to bring peace to the world. That's what Maimonides says. So in that sense, every mitzvah is all pieces in that puzzle. It's God says, here, bring peace to the world. And here's a bunch of mitzvahs that are going to help you do it. Maybe we don't see how eating matzah brings peace to the world, but that's on me. Maimonides saw it, obviously. So if the purpose of the entire Torah, text 5, which includes each mitzvah, is to bring peace to the world, it follows that no mitzvah can be said to have been superseded by a mitzvah that brings peace. If the mitzvah of Shabbos candles, is centrally about peace, it's about bringing peace to the world. It's not a mitzvah to eat matzah, and it also brings peace to the world. The whole thing of Shabbos candles is about peace. Then its soul is shared by all other mitzvahs. The idea you can not what the Rebbe is saying is no mitzvah, meaning the mitzvah of Chanukah candles. You can't say it was superseded by a mitzvah that brings peace. This is because the mitzvah that brings peace fulfills the very purpose of the other mitzvah too. Thus, the other mitzvah has been fulfilled, not overruled. If they, according to Maimonides, every mitzvah, including the mitzvah of lighting Shabbos candles, is about bringing peace to the world, oh, great, because I'm doing that with Shabbos candles. Because Shabbos candles are essentially about bringing peace, and it's not shunting aside Chanukah. Chanukah candles also, it's about bringing peace to the world. If that's the case, then Shabbos candles is not so much as overrules or pushes aside. It fulfills it fulfills the mission, the objective, centrally. I guess maybe one could say, if actually let's go a little further. Let's take 6. Going now to Chanukah. Now, let's look a little bit about Chanukah. And Chanukah is a mitzvah. All mitzvahs are meant to bring peace to the world. But like I said before, why does this message show up in Chanukah? Does Chanukah itself have a central peace message? And is that why Maimonides is writing this whole deal at the end of the laws of Chanukah? Text 6. In the era of the Second Temple, the Greek kingdom issued decrees against the Jewish people, attempting to nullify their faith and forbidding them to observe the Torah and its commandments. They extended their hands against their property and their daughters. They entered the sanctuary, wrought havoc in it, and made the sacraments impure. So the Greeks came and they disrupted a Jewish society. We're not talking about land. We're not talking about theft. I mean, there was that too. But really, they didn't want us to live with the wholesomeness of Jewish life. The Jews suffered greatly under them, for they oppressed them greatly until the God of our ancestors had mercy upon them, delivered upon them from their hand and saved them. So through the war of the Hasmoneans, we were saved. The sons of the Hasmoneans, the high priests, overcame them, slew them, and saved the Jews from their hand. They appointed a kingdom from the priests, the king from the priests, and sovereignty returned to Israel for more than 200 years. Accordingly, the sages of that generation ordained that these 8 days, which begin from the 25th of Kislev, should be commemorated as days of happiness and praise of God. Candles should be lit in the evening at the entrance to the houses, and each of these 8 nights to publicize and reveal the miracle. This is just as an aside. In the Talmud and here in Maimonides, and the practice for many centuries was specifically to light Chanukah candles at the front doorway of a home, because it's all about publicity. Chanukah is very much, it's about publicizing the miracle. The reason we have an 18-foot dreidel on the corner is not because it says S for that anywhere in Jewish law, but that's good Chanukah publicity. That's what it's about. It's not publicity for any publicity campaign, but it's the idea to publicize the miracle and publicize the holiday. So that's the theme of Chanukah. Now, what happened there? What happened is that we had a wholesome society. Now, the Hebrew word for peace, shalom, is also the Hebrew word for wholesome, shalem. It means that things are balanced, that they're not fractured between people and within ourselves, or at peace with ourselves, or at peace with others. That it comes with wholesomeness. So in the times of Chanukah, that the Greeks came in and they greatly disrupted and abused a wholesome society. And when Chanukah, when the Hasmoneans won the war, when they came and they stood up for us, what they did was they restored peace to Israel. They restored the wholesomeness. So Chanukah, what we celebrate, if we're going to read it in this key, the whole celebration of Chanukah is about the restoration of peace. Because not only restoration of peace, that now we're not fighting. It's the restoration of the wholesomeness of the land, the wholesomeness of the people, the wholesomeness of the Jewish commonwealth that was. So now, Hanukkah, we can see, has a specific relationship with peace also. So the idea that Maimonides in the Chanukah laws tells us that even though Hanukkah is about peace, still in all, if you have one candle, Shabbos candle, or a Hanukkah candle, and you only have enough money for one of them, we do the Shabbos candle first because the light is centrally about peace. Even though Hanukkah is about peace, and Shabbos is about also, bringing a certain wholesomeness, and the Shabbos candles are about peace, because the Shabbos candles are frontally about what we call Shalom Bayis, peace in the home, that gets precedence over the Hanukkah candles. So now let's look a little bit into this peace idea. Shabbos, we're told, when we look at the story of creation, it says God created the world in 6 days. And then the 7th day, God rested. Now, the way the Torah describes it, says that God completed the work on the 7th day. So, but we say 6 days he worked, and the 7th day he rested. So he completed the work on the 6th day, and the 7th day he rested. But it says he completed on the 7th day. So what does Rashi tell us there? That after God created the world, it was lacking one thing. What was it lacking? The idea of rest or peace. And that came on Shabbos. That completed the world. In other words, it wasn't an active construction, so to speak, but it brought the beauty of Shabbos. That completed the world. What was the world lacking? At that point, rest. When Shabbat arrived, the rest arrived. Thus, the work was completed and finished. So it is fair to say that the work was completed on the 7th day, even though all the construction, so to speak, went on for 6 days, because it introduced this idea of Shabbat, of the rest on Shabbos. Now, what is this? The Shabbos idea is about bringing it. It's a positive thing. We should be feeling our own connectedness with each other, connectedness with ourselves, connectedness with God. That is the goal of Shabbos. There are a lot of prohibitions on Shabbos, but to prohibit, don't do this, don't do this, don't do this. The only reason for those prohibitions is to get away the clutter so that we can feel connected. Shabbos has more prohibitions than positive commandments, but it's all prohibitions to protect the one positive commandment. Enjoy your Shabbos, feel your Shabbos, feel connected, more connected to yourself, your loved ones, and God. That's the theme of Shabbos. In order to do that, don't plow, don't leave the world alone, and think about your own connectedness. That's what the Shabbos idea is. Now, if you look in text 8, it says, for all these reasons, when it comes to the question of whether to light Shabbat or Hanukkah candles, the Hanukkah laws in themselves instruct us to light Shabbos candles. Lighting up the home brings peace into the home. This means that in this instance, the Shabbos candles accomplish a purpose in the concept of peace, the focus of Hanukkah, more than the Hanukkah candles. The natural conclusion is therefore to light the Shabbos candles. What is Hanukkah candles about? Hanukkah candles are about remembering the war, remembering the miracle. It's about lighting up the darkness. It's about tackling the darkness. Shabbos candles you don't put in the window. Shabbos candles Shabbos candles, no mitzvah Shabbos candles to put it by your door facing the outside. The idea of the Shabbos candles and Hanukkah candles are very different. Shabbos candles are about bringing peace to the home. Hanukkah candles are about lighting up the night, because we fought. We experienced night. We experienced the darkness. The darkness closed in on us, and with the Syrian Greeks. And every year, not only do we celebrate, say thank you God, we do it in a way, ideally, where we're lighting up the night. That's the idea. It's tackling the negativity. Shabbos is let's sidestep the fracture of the world and feel connectedness. Hanukkah is about, yes, it's about celebrating the peace, but it's about tackling the disruption to peace. So in that case, the Shabbos candles are more hit-on. Shabbos candles accomplish the purpose and the concept of the feast, the focus of Hanukkah more than the Hanukkah candles. The natural conclusion there is therefore to light the Shabbat candles. Therefore, because that there is that central theme of Shabbos candles, that's why they get precedence, and that's why Maimonides is, according to what the Rabbi is saying here, Maimonides is telling us in the laws of Hanukkah, remember, this is, yes, Hanukkah, but he's not going to let us finish the laws of Hanukkah without putting it in his last piece. Remember, Hanukkah is not only about celebrating a miracle and lighting lights, and he doesn't even say eating latkes, but whatever the laws of Hanukkah are, reciting the prayers, it's about peace. It's not as directly head-on about peace as Shabbos is, but Hanukkah is about peace. It's tackling it in that way. And therefore, he puts into Hanukkah something which, again, what Hanukkah isn't. Says Shabbos comes first. But why does he say Hanukkah isn't? Because he's saying, because Hanukkah is, it's just in a different way. Hanukkah is about peace. Shabbos is about it frontally, and Hanukkah is not as frontally. But don't mistake that Hanukkah is not about peace. That theme has to still be in our minds. And in a way, this is what the Rebbe brings up. Why did Maimonides bring that example of erasing the name of God to restore peace between husband and wife? The Rebbe points out something. He says, you don't take an existent piece of Torah. You sit down, you write a little scroll, you write God's name with purity, with the intent that you're scraping it off. You're going to destroy it. And that is not a contradictory thing, because the destroying itself is fulfilling the value of the name. You wrote it with that. It's not being somehow hypocritical. You said it's holy, and then you scraped it off. The scraping it off itself is proof of the power of the name. We present this proof in the text 9. The fact that God's name is blotted out to restore peace between a husband and a wife. Peace is not just important enough to justify blotting out God's name. It is so important that we write God's name in the first place, only to blot it out and thus restore peace between husband and wife. This means that the mitzvah of writing God's name with all its inherent sanctity and intensity is only realized and manifested when it is blotted out to restore peace. So therefore, the idea, the counterintuitive idea that we can somehow see the sanctity of the name by destroying it is what just look a little deeper. It's about the sanctity of the name, and it's about the power of the name, and it's about the power of the peace. But not only by using God's name, but by actually erasing it. Chanukah, there is the idea of lighting up the night, tackling the night. There was a war. War is not peace, but the whole idea of the war was defensive, and was about us being able to maintain the sanctity, integrity of our own lives. So we'll turn to text 10. What is the idea of, in general? So now let's drill a little bit further. Say the idea of peace in the world. How is it that there isn't? It's a godly world. God is one. God is there's unity in God, absolute unity in God. So how in a godly world do we not have absolute unity? How do we see very much the opposite? So the founder of Chabad in his book Tanya writes in text 10, an idea, an ancient Torah idea, that this brute physical world, in other words, the tangible physical world, is the lowest in the sense it is the least spiritually sensitive. When lower here means on the scale of spiritual sensitivity. So this is an important can of seltzer for me. But it's a can of seltzer. The spiritual sensitivity, maybe, if I drink it and have the proper intention and I use my feelings for a good thing, that's one thing. But it's just a can of seltzer. You're not going to find much. On the surface, it doesn't have much spirituality. In that sense, that's what the physical world in which we live. There's none lower in terms of concealment of the divine light, and in terms of its doubled and redoubled spiritual darkness, because we believe that there's godliness in this. There's godliness in everything. I don't see it. I just see LaCroix. but there is godliness there. It's concealed. That's the way God wanted it. So we live in a world where there's godliness, but concealed. So much so that it is filled with unholy and unclean forces. It's not only that it comes to kind of a neutral seltzer, but there's unholiness. There's room for people to really hurt each other, to do terrible things. That's the world God created. Now, the person doing it is created by God. The instrument that God forbid using is also created by God. There's godliness and everything, and they're abusing it. And God allows for that, allows for the free choice of it. So, in other words, the physical world in which God created, there's an inherent oneness, but you don't find the oneness easily. It is filled with unholy and unclean forces that are absolutely opposed to God, saying, I am, and there's nothing besides me. This is a verse from Isaiah, which means he's quoting like Pharaoh. It's the arrogance of saying, this is what I want to do. Why not? It's a person who thinks about higher morality, and God says, so you want to do it, but if it's wrong, I'm not going to do it. That's when we have a higher consciousness. So, if so, how do we bring peace to a world which God created as kind of disparate and fractured? The true and complete meaning of peace is not just that conflict ceases and peace emerges. Rather, it is the creation of an environment in which the very notion of opposition is simply impossible. This means that it becomes clear to us that another's existence doesn't oppose, is not even apart from my existence. So the imagery that I speak to the teenagers about, or others, that if you think about life from a Torah perspective, you think about life like a jigsaw puzzle with 10,000 pieces. When I used to do jigsaw puzzles, you pour them all out, and you have a box top, and then you pick something up, and you can't tell what it is. And when you look at the picture on the box top, you kind of figure it out, and you put together, and you build your puzzle. The assumption is, when I pour out that box of the puzzle that I got for Chanukah, is that there's no piece missing from there, and there's no extra piece. Every piece counts. Every piece is part of the puzzle. And if any of those pieces is missing, the puzzle is not complete. So if there's a puzzle of Reggie Jackson, a piece of his face is not really, as far as the integrity of the puzzle, that's maybe a cooler piece of it, and a piece of just like the sky in Yankee Stadium maybe is not as salient or exciting a piece. But without that piece of the sky, it's not a full puzzle. It's because every piece is necessary. Torah is saying that life is, in this sense, to use this metaphor, it's full of puzzle pieces. Everything in our lives is like a puzzle piece. And we look at the Torah as the box top, figure out where it belongs. But there's nothing discardable, and everything we're all parts of the same puzzle. So there's a person who I have friction with, a neighbor. That's high and mental, so that's easy. But and myself. But let's say so I have a friction with a neighbor. So settling the friction and calling a ceasefire and burying the hatchet is good, but usually you remember exactly where the hatchet's buried. So it's not necessarily solving things. Coming to a consciousness to realize, no, we're neighbors. We're in this together. And even if we're not neighbors, we're all you live across the world, but the fact is we're all part of this human team. And this world, and what how we have to act with each other, and we have a mission in this world. That sense of connectedness, interconnectedness, that's real peace. So the idea of God gave us, yes, puzzle pieces look disparate, and it's hard to tell what this piece has to do with that piece. It's okay, you'll get there. Just look at it, build your world, look at the box top of Torah, and be able to see how not only things are not irreconcilable, but they're actually all part of the same unit. And this, finally, text 11b, this is the deeper meaning of the saying, the Torah was given to bring peace to the world, which is again how Maimonides ends his laws of Chanukah. to reveal that the world and all therein is really the Torah, an inherent part of God. See, there's godliness in everything. Everything has a purpose. And it's our job to be able to bring the purpose in everything to its proper place, put it in its proper place in the puzzle. It is the world's nature to conceal its divine light. Godliness is not openly visible on earth. On the contrary, the world appears to be separate from God to the extent that it is possible to assume not only that the world is not an extension of God, but that it doesn't depend on God for its existence. It is possible to assume that this palace has no master, to use a Talmudic phrase from the Medrash. It was it, but what God? There's no God. And that, go and disprove that. So the feeling of that we have no responsibility, that there is no inherent interconnectedness, that's kind of, it is built into our instinct. But God gave us the Torah to bring peace to the world. And that means that the Torah makes peace between the world and God, as it were. And the Torah enables us to recognize and intuit that the universe is not in conflict with God, nor does it conceal godliness. That the universe depends constantly on God for its existence. Most importantly, that creation is merely an extension of the Creator. So, we can go through the key points. There are 5 of them. First one is the purpose of Shabbos candles is to enhance peace in the home. Purpose of Chanukah candle is to proclaim that we can and therefore must overcome darkness and strife. Number 2, strife is only possible when we lose sight of the fact that we are all extensions of one God. Number 3, the purpose of the entire Torah is to teach us about God, and thus the purpose of the Torah is peace, because the godliness is one, and everything in the world is part of that oneness. It follows, number 4, it follows that if we only own one candle on Friday night of Chanukah, we should use it as a Shabbos candle because it directly enhances peace. And finally, number 5, by enhancing peace, we fulfill both mitzvahs and serve the purpose of the entire Torah. Are there any questions? Thank you. Thanks so much.
Don't you have to unmute them?
They can unmute themselves. We're very permissive. They do that. All right. So now I wish everyone a happy Hanukkah. Go online and find all the things we got going on. I think tonight is Burnsville. We got lots of stuff going on. And actually Wednesday night, we have the Basking Ridge municipality is making is holding a Hanukkah party right here on our corner. We're using it with our Hanukkah menorah. They're blocking off Valley Road. Should be a few hundred people over here. Yeah, and they solicited personal, individual donations to pay for everything. It was great. Yeah, very nice. Yeah, someone asked something?
What's that? Oh, no.
No. Okay.
See
Have
you
a happy
Wednesday. Happy
Yes, what?
Hanukkah. See you
Happy
Wednesday.
Thank you.
Bye.
See you then. Yes. Be well. Have a happy Hanukkah.
Yay.
Yeah.